afternoon. I want to talk today about poltergeists and the very strange case suffered by Keith Linder in Seattle in America for the past 8 years. In fact, I'll do my best to engage you with this utterly bizarre subject in the short spaces, probably about 3 slots that I've got time for at the moment. My own engagement with poltergeists began in around 2012. I had no interest in them. I was a lifelong atheist. I'd had serious bereavements, including my father, which might compel me to try and believe in an afterlife or the soul, and I did not. I was researching a book on vampires, and poltergeist came my way. I read a lot of utter craziness, and I found that it was at the same time consistently crazy across time and space. And I spoke to a colleague one afternoon about this research. Have you ever come across poltergeists? I'd known this person for 7 years. When I said this, they went white, froze up, went silent, and a little while later said, "Can we go somewhere more private?" Told me the most harrowing experience of their life, which was a poltergeist between 2 different houses. And I went back to another city, spoke to another friend I'd known for 12 years. Same story, less traumatic, but 2 people I'd known for 12 years told me a lot of things, a lot of personal things, and never breathed a whisper of this. So I found myself on the edge of a strange adventure, an open secret, right in hiding in plain sight, if you like, in our super-rational society, which has invented a new taboo: poltergeists, ghosts, the paranormal. Do not trust Wikipedia on this topic. It has been hijacked by an organisation called Psychop, or now the CSI, and is not really even true to its founder, Carl Sagan, who had a much more open mind than a lot of those people. Okay, I'll try and talk in detail now about Keith and his experiences with Ghost Adventures. More soon. Welcome back to Keith Linder and the Poltergeists of Bothell, Seattle. Imagine the very worst thing that's ever happened to you. And then imagine that the police can't help you, doctors can't help you, the church can't help you, and a striking number of people, sometimes including even your own family, don't believe you. Some of those people who don't believe you also give you an impressive lot of abuse. With this, I partly sympathise. There is nothing crazier than the poltergeist that I have studied. And it's so deeply irrational, it hits you sideways in your rational mind so violently that it does one of a few things. It makes you laugh, it makes you angry. It's irrational. These are irrational responses, but it's actually almost certainly real. I've studied hundreds of these cases. I've spoken to dozens of people face to face about these things, and the problem is we've created a new taboo in our society, which makes people embarrassed to talk about the most important, the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to them. I really don't blame you if you do not believe this. Listen to John Resch in America in 1984. I see it and I still don't believe it. How can a glass fly at a 90-degree angle around a door frame, or the television run with no electricity? Poltergeists don't play up. Spirits, possibly of the dead, real people with consciousness, do not easily play up for the television. So if you take your television cameras in there, you spend a lot of time and money and don't get a result, well, tough. But don't make up an angle for the television slot. You're playing games with somebody's life. You're playing games with the most traumatic event in somebody's life. And if you're going to cover that event, the very least you need to do is read the book. I edited it. It's incredible. Do your research, or keep your mouth shut about the worst thing that's ever happened to somebody. More soon. What is a poltergeist? Simplest definition, and it does get very complicated the more you study it, is a poltergeist is not a haunted house, but a haunted person. Keith sadly corresponds to this description. He's been followed by the poltergeist that attached itself, if you like, to him in his Bothell house in 2012. He's been followed to hotels for work. He's been followed to his place of work. He's been followed and buffeted around on aeroplanes at 30,000 feet, and also to further addresses. This corresponds over the centuries, and also to the case which I mentioned earlier of the friend of mine who moved house and the poltergeist went with them. That's a very basic description of a poltergeist. A description of Keith's case, ironically, for someone who's suffered quite a lot of misrepresentation, trolling, the sense that he was faking this case, which has made his life hell for 8 years. The case is actually incredibly well documented. There's tremendous wealth of sound files, photographs, videos, and simply actually the stuff that we take very seriously when someone stands up and says it in a court of law. Stories. The voice of somebody who sounds like they are dealing with an impossible situation as best they can. That's what Keith sounds like to me. I know because I edited his book. I know because I spoke to him over and over again, many long, fascinating hours on Skype across the Atlantic. Keith's case was vetted by a veteran parapsychologist, Steve Meara, who flew with his colleague Don Phillips all the way from Britain to the west of America to spend time in Keith's house and spend very little time asleep and most time documenting. Ghost Adventures really needs to read that book and take seriously what actually exists. If you want to do a subject as difficult as this, don't play games with the worst thing that's happened in someone's life. And at the very least, do your research. Read the book. It's amazing. Keith Linder and the Poltergeists of Bothell. Final word on this. Why should you believe Keith's story? Why should you go beyond what you might have seen on television? Well, one reason, if you look up a poltergeist case on Wikipedia, you will get possibly the worst representation of actual events that you can imagine. I've looked up, for example, the Enfield poltergeist, famous case of the 70s on Wikipedia, and on that basis I completely dismissed the whole thing until I actually read the book, which does bear no resemblance whatsoever to Wikipedia. It's been hijacked by a group of pseudo-skeptics. They're not skeptics. Skeptic means to look out, know what you're talking about if you want to be a real skeptic. Why else should you believe Keith? Two cases, two instances from his book, which has an incredible wealth of stories. And by the way, it doesn't read like Hollywood. It goes slack, nothing happens for a while. It reads like a very, very tough experience by somebody who's telling the truth. And it also reads like this at one point. Poltergeists are seen by radar. They're picked up by sound recording when no one can hear them. They're sensed by dogs, sometimes by cats. And poltergeist blobs on the ceiling of Keith's living room were picked up by Microsoft while they were proto-testing a new game box. No one ever explained what was in there. Secondly, Keith one fine day was trying to get some nap after another disturbed night, was lying down on his bed in the afternoon, and something rushed through him. It felt like an electric shock. It also felt weirdly ecstatic. When I read this, I was editing his book, my heart leapt, and I remembered I'd seen this before. I don't believe that Keith read the book in which somebody wrote about a ghost passing through him in his restaurant in America, and described it as the most ecstatic experience of his life. I don't believe he faked that or anything else in that book. Thanks for listening. This is crazy. It's also true. I'll be happy to talk about it more if people are interested. Have a good weekend.